Hello, South Africa, Namibia, Canada, Belgium. Hello to all of you. Welcome to our YouTube workshop. Shall I stay or shall I go? Too bad to stay and too good to leave. And when I began writing this story, I was reminded of me at 23. I was in a relationship that was exactly that: too bad to stay and too good to leave. And we were constantly breaking up and patching up, breaking up and patching up. And anyone who's been in this kind of a relationship knows when it's good, it's great. And when it's bad, it's horrible. So, should I stay or should I go? I call it a state of relational ambivalence, when we are continuously seesawing between contradictory thoughts and feelings of love and hate, attraction and disgust, excitement and fear, contempt and envy for someone or for our relationship or for ourselves in the relationship for that matter. And the resulting whiplash is exhausting, not only for the people in the relationship, but for all the people around it. So many of us can think about ourselves here, but many of us have probably been with friends who have been in those situations. And sometimes it goes on for days, months, and years. So, a lot to talk about, but first, let me do the housekeeping. Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining me for Letters from Esther Live, my monthly newsletter and workshop series that helps you reflect, act, and develop greater confidence in your relationships. Relational intelligence is what we are cultivating together. And this series happens monthly on YouTube and on Facebook Live. If you want more letters from Esther Perel, you visit estherperel.com/blog. And I invite you to join me every month here on YouTube and on Facebook and to discuss this newsletter live. So you read it, then you think about it, then we come together, then we discuss it, then you get to ask me questions at the end here, and we have a conversation all together. And before we start, I, of course, invite you to consider reaching out to a person where you think this should be so and so, should actually be here right now. So reach out to someone and invite them to join us. And take notes, either a notebook or a phone or an iPad, whatever, but take notes, write down some of the things. It's incredible how much we think we never will forget, and then it just fizzles out. And if you like what we do here and how we go about creating relational intelligence together, subscribe to my YouTube channel and just like it. Let me hear from you. Okay. Relational ambivalence. Shall we define the term first of all, right? So I want to define it again, because while that phrase relational ambivalence may sound quite unfamiliar, I know that each and every one of us here has felt it. This is actually a feeling that we know. We don't necessarily name it in this way. So, relational ambivalence is those contradictory thoughts and feelings of love and hate, of attraction and disgust, of excitement and fear, of envy and contempt that we may experience in relationships. And many of us have felt relational ambivalence toward our parents. That's pretty much where it starts. I love my parents, I need my parents, but they don't let me do something, or they want, or they're hurting me, or they're depriving me, or I'm mad at them and I love them. And how do I square a dependence and aggression towards the very people that I often depend upon? Friends. We have ambivalence towards our friends, the one who still owes us money, the one who never apologized, the one who keeps standing us up, but we like them anyway because once we are with them, we actually really enjoy it. Colleagues, I'll touch on all of these, but today I want to focus mostly on relational ambivalence that happens in romantic relationships. And you may be in one now, you may have been in many before. So this doesn't have to be, I don't have a partner, therefore this doesn't apply to me. It really applies to all of us. But romantic relationships like the one that I had with my boyfriend in my early 20s, they have a rhythm. We work ourselves into a fit. We decide enough is enough And finally, we break up. This is movement number one. But eventually, as we feel calmer and we reset and we begin to be more able to think and to reflect and we feel less smothered, our core vulnerabilities momentarily get relieved. And that little voice starts propping up. Should we meet? Should we talk it out? Oh God, I remember how great it was. When it was good, it was really good. Maybe then we reach out. Maybe we don't. If we reach out, maybe we meet at a cafe, or better yet, a bar in which a drink may help the walls come down. And suddenly, we are so wonderful at talking to each other. We're having a really sane, calm, sober conversation like we wish we would have every other time when we explode at each other or when we just kind of call it quits. None of our buttons are being pushed in this unique conversation, at least not in a bad way. And it's flirty, and we're connecting, and we're longing, and we remember, and we think, we were silly to throw this away, weren't we? We really have invested so much in each other. We have such a history together, and there's so much potential here. Inch by inch, look by look, we work our way back only to blow it all up again a week later. That's one of the movements, of the choreographies of relational ambivalence. There are many, but this is the one that I think we pretty much all can recognize. But there are a few other typical scripts of ambivalence. So let me test a few of these out with you. You know, one is the sunken cost, right? We've been together for a decade, and I'm constantly thinking, this isn't right. This should end. How much longer am I going to take this? There's a gap between us. And I start to think after that about the kids, if there are, and the lifestyle, and the financial interdependence, and how tough it would be to dismantle this whole thing. And slowly I talk my way back into it. And sometimes I can do this in one day. It's just in and out, in and out. Another one, we've been together 2, 3 years, and one partner wants to go deeper into the next phase of a relationship, wants a deeper commitment. And the other one keeps on saying, I don't know, I'm not sure this is what I want. And their ambivalence becomes manifest power in the relationship, because sometimes it's one thing to be rejected by someone, but it's another thing to live with someone who is unsure about us. That one will eat at us, just, bite by bite. Another dynamic of ambivalence is when we split the ambivalence. One week I say we should end it. Then the next week I think, okay, I'm back. And then you say, no, we should end it. And so we alternate. There's always one of us holding the in and one of us holding the out. That is another major dance. And then the next one, stable ambiguity. Stable ambiguity is a fantastic term that my colleague Terry Real has taught me. Basically, it's when you engage in the relationship because you're too afraid to be alone, but you're not really willing to engage in the intimacy that is required. So if you look at simmering, if you look at icing, when you put people on hold, these are holding patterns in which you are stalling, right? And it's a kind of state in which you emphasize the undefined nature of the relationship. And at the same time, you get just enough comfort and just enough consistency, but not too much that you forgo your freedom of these undefined boundaries. All these scripts are scripts of relational ambivalence. So I'm going back to when I'm 23 and I'm with this boyfriend, and we just going in and out, back and forth the whole time. And back then, we decided that maybe we should go to couples therapy. And this couples therapy, it lasted one session. Why? Because when we went, the therapist basically said to us, about an hour or two into it, you're done. And it's like we both just sat there, and we went home and we called it quits. But a few days later, I called the therapist and I said, how could you say such a thing? You don't understand. You see us now when we are in crisis, but you don't know how good things can be between us. You get the picture, right? It's like if we were to continue, 1 week we would be coming in to talk about the crisis. 1 week we would be coming in to talk about why we should stick it through together and why this is such a special relationship. And the therapist basically said I had to take a stance and I would take one side of the ambivalence. And if it fit you, then you would basically go with this. And if it didn't fit you, you would ally together against me rather than split the ambivalence with each other. We would split it with me, and you could continue and say, this therapist doesn't know what she's talking about. Look, I never forgot this session. I never forgot this intervention. She didn't want to become what we call in my jargon a homeostatic maintainer, the person who basically keeps you stuck because they seesaw with you. One day we talk about why to leave, the next week we talk about why to stay, and back and forth like that. And I think ultimately she did us a favor, no doubt. But that said, after practicing for quite a few decades myself, I can say that taking a stance is rarely, rarely simple. So now I want to talk together with you a little bit. I see Romania, I see Montreal, I see Greece. I mean, you're all over the planet. Um, Here's what I want to do. I want to hear from all of you. And I want to first ask you, is this resonating with you? And tell me in the chat, give me some examples of your experience with relational ambivalence. What makes it so hard? Part of why we experience relational ambivalence with such challenge is because it often is a core feature of our most important relationships, right? Having ambivalence toward people in and of itself is not a problem. I mean, it actually is often a sign of maturity that people are not all good or all bad. And I would venture to say that at this moment, from a cultural point of view, we're often missing this nuance. We're often quick to want to resolve the ambivalence by making a choice: leave, stay, all good, all bad, follow them, cancel them. I mean, we're not holding the contradictions of people, holding the tensions that we notice about others or that we experience inside ourselves. When it comes to our parents, the goal is actually often to integrate the positive and negative feelings that we hold toward them. That holding of the tension is part and parcel of the healing process for many of us. So let me read a few of them here. I've always got one foot out the door, you know. My gut tells me to get out of this marriage, and my friends, you're going too fast. I'm currently dealing with this. My husband cheated. Yes, to what degree should I compromise? Yep. Look, I told you earlier that I would touch upon these other areas of relational ambivalence. So, how many of you related just to what I said about holding these contradictory feelings towards your parents and towards a sibling? The sibling that hasn't apologized, that owes you money, that wasn't particularly nice growing up, that needs the reckoning that needs to happen inside families, or the old friend that just always talks only about themselves, or towards your job, or towards the place you live. Just want you to understand, we have ambivalence about a lot of things all the time. It's not just it's a problem, but we can get stuck in it, right? How many of the areas of your life have plagued or defined you by this question? Should I stay or should I go? In this house, in this job, in this friendship, in this relationship, that in this program that I registered in, should I stay or should I go? And sometimes we need to decide, but sometimes it's actually about integrating the ambivalence because it helps us understand that there is no perfection and that there is a complexity that we have to live with. The question that really to me is at the core of this is this: how do we know when we need to make a decision and when the decision is actually about integrating the polarities or the dualities? And I think it takes practice and it takes patience. My dear friend and colleague Alexandra Salomon has said that patience is also a form of action. It's not purely passivity, it's not resignation. It's letting life unfold in front of us so that we get a sense as to which side we're going to lean on, or what suits us for now, that this isn't an irreversible for life, forever decision all the time. That is to say that relational ambivalence is a fact of life, and it will be with us in many relationships. And what does it mean to get off the ride? And what does it mean to hold on to it? So, I want to do a little exercise with you. And it's an exercise that I actually asked many of our followers to do with me on social. So, here's the thing, instead of coming up with solutions for your ambivalence, I want to ask you, what are your critical questions? Imagine I come to you in a situation where I am stuck. What are the questions that you would ask me? Let's turn the tables around. Even if I came to you back then at 23, 33, 43, 53, let's continue, right? And I come to you and I say, I don't know what to do. On one side, on the other side, that, what would you ask me to help me clarify? What would you say to me about my desire to resolve the ambivalence? Let me see a little bit. He's what that is what life is about. Agreed. The relationship is over. Lori, what? Yes, you would put it in the context of my values. And Barbara, and Todd would ask, why do I want to stay? But you see, the why, what would be the consequences of the decision of staying? And what would be the consequences of the decision of leaving? What are the pieces that would need to come together for this or for that? Is probably a more suitable question than the why, because the why invites the rumination, whereas the what happens if and when is the consequences of my actions and my choices. And then you can say, I imagine I meet you 5 years from now and we discussed this thing and it worked out. See, the thing is, hindsight, you don't know. You can only make a decision in the context and in the moment. What are the pros and cons that I would ask my beliefs? Okay. Is life better or worse with them? Yes. What do you feel like you're missing in life? Dali, it's about to put in the balance. Yes. Believe you're worth more. Yes, because often the ambivalence is the ambivalence of the other person toward me. Yes. How do we make a decision knowing that there is a chance of regret? Well, there is. Every decision is a choice, and every choice involves loss. And it means that you have to remember, at the time I was considering that, and that was what was important for me then. And that is why I decided that I didn't want to stay, because I wanted to go back to my own country, or because I wanted to continue my studies, or because I knew I wouldn't want a child, or because I was still really connected to my ex. And even though I let this go, it made sense at the time in the context that I was in. You have to remember it at the moment when the decision is made. You can't judge the decision of then with the criteria of the future. This is so, so important, I want to pose the same question to you now, Um, and I'm going to read actually a few of the things that people have said that really stood out for me in terms of ambivalence. Ambivalence towards my parents, when I started to understand that they're not just parents but also people. Ambivalence towards my friends in my late 30s. I am single, I have no kids. Why am I hanging on to some of the friends that I am with? I'm feeling full body yes and full body no simultaneously towards somebody. I go back and forth between green flags and red flags. I'm ambivalent towards my decision to become a parent, when it gets too hard. Parenthood is often an identity that elicits a lot of ambivalence inside of us. I'm in love with a married man. My mother, I hate her and I love her at the same time. My marriage, I'm ambivalent towards my marriage. I want a divorce, but I am staying. Every time I remember that my husband has cheated and lacks attention, I am ambivalent about my relationship. I am on and off again in a relationship, and I'm addicted to the thrills of the highs and lows. We could do a whole thing just on this one. I'm falling in love with my straight best friend. And how does relational ambivalence look like to you? Now, I'm asking you to answer me this, and I'm reading you some of the examples of what people have already answered, so you get a sense of the breadth of thinking that and experience that goes around this, right? How does relational ambivalence look like to you? Full of anxiety, scary, but also it feels good to be seen and heard and honest about it. Questioning the loyalty in my relationship, the suspicion that I carry inside of me the whole time. Unsure about how to move through moments of rupture and then feeling incompatible. It looks gut wrenching. It looks like a state of chaos, and I don't know where to turn. It looks like confusion. It looks like cognitive dissonance. I know things are not good, but I don't know what to do about it. Or I would correct it. You know things are not good, and you know what you need to do about it, and you're afraid to do it. Or you're not sure what would happen if you do it, or you're actually very sure what would happen if you do it, and you prefer this to the consequences of that decision. Walking on eggshells with my own brain. I love this one. Can't trust what I feel moment to moment. So the ambivalence escalates into a full blown experience of chronic self doubt. I feel empty. It feels like I'm sabotaging a beautiful relationship by wanting to end it while I know that it has all that it has all the time. So let me see what you are telling me. Yep. I'm walking on eggshells in my own home. I feel, Hector, I feel shame for staying. Yes, uncomfortable and comfortable. I feel shame for staying because of what others think. I'm no longer interested in sex, so I let him go. Makes me feel like I can't trust what I feel, Veronica. Yes, Bartel and Jessica. Is ambivalence love? No, ambivalence is not love. Love experiences ambivalence as one of its many feelings sometimes, but ambivalence itself is not love. I'm addicted to the ups and downs, says Denise. How can therapy help? Yeah. So many good questions. Okay, I feel the breath. Now, take these experiences and turn them into questions to me, and let's have a conversation together. What are some of the things on the basis of what I'm saying? How does all this land on you? Um, and what are you experiencing as you're hearing this right now? And as you are recognizing your own experiences of ambivalence, what's happening inside of you physically, emotionally, mentally? Like, so it's not just your thoughts, right? Um, I love her, but she's still married. She's still married for financial reasons. Need this. Okay. Yeah, let's see what about an open relationship as a way to either confirm or resolve ambivalence? Is it just FOMO? It's a great question. Um, Sexual and romantic non-exclusivity is a set of values. It's not just a lifestyle. It sits on the values between individual fulfillment and commitment, and how to reconcile these two, the need to belong and the need for autonomy, how to reconcile these two. So if it's a I'm not attracted to you, but I really like our friendship and I like our life together, but I don't really want to touch you, and therefore we should open our relationship. I would say that as the moment that the opening up of the relationship is experienced by one of the two people as a rejection and as a solution to a lack of something that I experience as a rejection and not as a joint choice of life, then it is not a real choice. It's a solution to another problem, and we call it open relationship. That's on a relational level. It's not just about the FOMO, it's much more than that. How can I know which way to go, Terry? Um, relationship. What do I? Okay, when to know if patience is the right? Look, sometimes you stay patient because you realize I need more science. I need more evidence inside of me or from my relationship. I need to test a few things. I need to see how we respond to different pieces of life. I need to know if this is something that's going to change or if this is actually permanent. But I think that if somebody says to you, I don't want a kid, I don't want a commitment, I don't want an exclusive relationship, I don't want, listen to them. Listen to them. Don't hope that it's just going to change and that this will turn around because you're going to make them turn around, etc. And that's where the patience piece becomes problematic. If it's vis-a-vis yourself and you say, I I'm not sure that this is where I need to be. They're not sure what this is bringing out in me, this relationship, or the kinds of issues that we are struggling with, or if the addictions are going to stop, or if there's going to finally be somebody who's going to get up from the couch. And I'm not sure that I can sustain for many more years to be with someone who is so chronically depressed, or whatever the situations are. Then you may need to say to yourself, have I waited long enough? Has anything changed in the years that I have been waiting here? Or in the months that I've been waiting? Has the conversation led to something else? Are we just turning around and around and around? And it's a ruminating, obsessive kind of situation of ambivalence, back and forth, this, and then we go around again and up and up. If you find yourself in that kind of a dance, then the patience may be more an experience of stuckness than of patience, in order to observe, in order to wait for signs and experiences that will help you make the decisions. That's really the fundamental difference, but it's subtle. This is not a hard science, patience, right? How should one approach talking about their ambivalence with their significant other in a way that doesn't make them feel attacked or judged? It's very difficult, in the sense that some people, no matter what you will say and how nicely you will say it and caringly you will say it and take it on you, put it upon you, will still feel like it is, about them. If you say to someone, I don't feel like I can comfortably talk to you about XYZ, they don't hear the I don't feel comfortable talking. They hear only the to you. So there are ways to really say this. I would love to have a different experience when we discuss this subject. I had a beautiful example yesterday of a couple that needed to discuss. They have had children, they're young, and they are talking will. And at one point, one of them just basically said to the other, this is how it should be. And the other one was just able to say, look, this is a difficult conversation to have. And I need to be able for both of us to have our opinions heard about this. This is not a decision you make unilaterally. And the interesting thing was not what this person said. It's that when that was said, the other one put their arms around, gave a big hug, and said, I don't want you to feel excluded from the conversation. That was the thing that allowed the discussion to continue. So when you say, how do you approach? You can approach in being caring, kind, equitable, etc. But the response of the person is what is going to determine how the conversation will have happened. You're not the only one in charge of this. That's the really important thing to understand. So what is it that you want to say? I don't know if I want to be with you. I don't know if I want to stay with you. I don't know if I want to continue seeing you. You can say, this is about me. You are a wonderful person. And I know you will take it personal because it is impossible not to. But to the degree to which you do, I really want you to understand, I find you a fantastic person. I just don't seem to share the same feelings that you have. And it hurts me to hurt you. It's the last thing I want to do. I care about you deeply, but I don't think we can continue. And you have to be able to tolerate that the other person will be hurt. You cannot circle around it. I like it, but and then you need to be able to accept, to say, we're going to end this, and not, I'm going to continue because I would love to continue to see you. Set them free. If you're not sure, if you're ambivalent, set them free and deal with your own sense of loss at that moment, because you have some too. The hidden story is that it looks like only the person who is being left or who's being put on hold is the person experiencing loss. And that's not true. because the person with the ambivalence is so busy with what they don't want that only after it happens do they get to experience the parts of the relationship that they did want and what it means to live without. I cannot overemphasize this. Yeah. I know I'm anxiously attached. How do I know I choose my partner because of him and that it's not my attachment style that makes me stay? You ask yourself a few questions. Willeman, you'd ask yourself a few questions, how much anxiety do I experience in the relationship? How much do I continuously want to make sure that you really want me, that you really like me, that you're really here to stay, that you're not going to leave me, that you're not critical of me, that I'm able to be everything that you want me to be, that I'm pleasing you, that I'm not speaking up because I'm making sure that you wouldn't be hurt or offended. Track what you call the expressions of the anxious attachment. Or that I say, you should leave me because I'm not going to be, you're not going to like me once you get to know me anyway. That kind of thing. I'm setting it up so that I don't have to experience it coming from you and I can be in charge of my own rejection. If you find that you're very busy with all these expressions of the anxiety, then go find yourself a good therapist and address this on your own. Don't drive your partner crazy about it and just say, I have to deal with a few issues. Because sometimes you're going to have a partner who is going to respond positively, and after a while they get exhausted because it feels that they are constantly having to prove themselves to you so that you can feel worthy of them. That kind of dance. Yes. Let's continue. AOC, Colleen, what do you say? What is the action that patience produces? Loving or getting to know the other person for who they are rather than who you want them to be, or learning who I truly am in response to another. It's not patience that produces that ability to recognize and accept the other for who they are. It is the acceptance and the recognition that the other people are separate from us, that their breath is separated from us. It's that there is a clear place where I start and where you start, and there's a boundary between us, and that when we look outside the window we see the same sky and we register this sky very differently. And that recognition, without it feeling, if you experience something differently from me and I don't think of it as I'm unseen, I'm invisible, I'm stupid, how can you see that when I see this, it invalidates me and all of that. This is not an act of patience. This is an act of differentiation. It's a very different experience in relationship. The patience in this moment, I put it, Colleen, in contrast to reactivity. It's, if you want, you could call non-reactivity a state of patience, a state of receptivity, a state of curiosity. Those are the pieces that go with patience. But what allows you to get to know the other person for who they really are is your willingness and your acceptance to receive difference right next to you. That's a very different story. Yes, Jasmine, my experience concerns the relationship with my dad. He's constantly violating my boundaries and used to be abusive. I love him still, but I want to go no contact to protect myself. Any advice? This is a situation that is probably a little bit more complicated than I can instantly say yay or no on the contact. Okay. In general, I tend to not run for the cutoffs, because a cutoff demands a tremendous amount of psychic energy to not be in touch with the person that you're thinking about all the time. I've seen brothers who haven't talked to each other in 30 years, but they still think about each other all the time. So it takes sometimes more energy not to see someone and not to be in contact with a family member than to actually be in contact. This is an opportunity for you, because you're going to need to learn it for you in your relationships with other people too, is to remain very clear and very firm. Up to here, stop, no more, thank you. Be it on the phone, be it on text, not to escalate, not to get in there into the arena all the time, and to remain very non-engaged. So the issue before you go into the no contact is, how do you learn to emotionally disengage from someone who is basically putting a whole bunch of things on you that they are experiencing inside of them and then blaming you for it. That's the dance, Yasmin, if I understand your question. So I would say learn very grounding, centering practices of where you say up to here. And that means he may get angry, he may push more, he may withdraw, he may pout, he may take money, lots of retaliatory tactics that are meant to intimidate you and make you not respond. And you need to be willing to endure some of those consequences. It's only when the person knows that they don't have an effect on you that they begin to change. As long as they know that you get hooked and they have you, the dance continues. Thank you, Yasmin. This is a great question. Hans, how to start being intimate again after loss of trust? Does the partner that is not trusted have to wait forever for the other person to initiate it? Look, I think that this is a big question. Do you wait to trust before you initiate being intimate again? No. It is often the act of being intimate again, emotionally, sexually, in multiple ways, that slowly brings up the trust. But what really brings up the trust after I'm going to imagine here a relational betrayal, an infidelity, etc., is that the person who injured you is able to engage fully in your feeling validated again. The loss of trust is the fact that somebody put their interest ahead of the relationship and they acted selfishly in a way that made it look like they didn't care about the effect it would have on you. So they need to be very proactively protecting the relationship. The more they become what I call the vigilante of the relationship, the more they protect the relationship, and the more you can actually think about something else. That allows you to then bring more trust. It's not that you wait, it's not all happening just inside of you. This is very important, this idea that you need to wait and sit. Okay, what is my trust measurement here for today? Has it gone up? That is absolutely not how it works. It works, the trust gets rebuilt through tiny moments of interaction, all kinds of what John Gottman calls bids for connection between the two people. And slowly you have this leap of faith again, because trust is ultimately a leap of faith. So, Hans, we could talk a lot about this. This is a subject that's very dear to me, that you can read a lot about in my book, The State of Affairs, or on the blog and on the podcast as well. I've done a lot of episodes on betrayal, on loss of trust in Where Should We Begin? Just really go and listen. You learn so much about you from listening to the others. We always think that we learn about ourselves by thinking about ourselves, but in fact, that's not necessarily the only way it works. Virginie, how about accepting imperfection? Ambivalence is about the battle of perfection, imperfection. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And integrating and holding the ambivalence is the acceptance of the fact that people and life is not perfect. And perfection, we could do a whole thing. What is this thing called perfection, right? What does it mean that we need to be in control of everything? What does it mean to surrender to the control of imperfection, actually, rather than to the control that everything has to be exactly the way I need it to be? Because 1 millimeter short of the plan, I instantly feel like the whole world is falling apart, or I am falling apart, because I only am as good as my last performance. So that is the dance around imperfection. It's a given imperfection. It's not something that you need to come to learn and develop. It's there. It's a fact of life. Everything is imperfect, and even if it appears perfect in the moment, it could break the next minute. Nothing is permanent in that sense. These are amazing questions, people. Erika, how do you disrupt stable ambiguity? That's a great question. We're in and out and we don't see each other for a few months, and one of us sends an email, a text, whatever, and says, what are you doing? Then we kind of get back in, we see each other for a week or two. It really is one person saying, either I really like this as is because it suits us both at this moment. That's what both of us don't seem to want more. And so, but let's make it obvious. Let's make it clear. Or you make it clear to yourself, for that matter. Or you say, I don't want this. And this isn't going to change because it is giving exactly what the other person wants. Comes Saturday, we have plans, but we don't talk the whole week. Everybody does their thing, you know. And seriously, if anything happens to you, is that the person you would reach out to? Is it a person that you can rely on? Has this person actually entered the inner circle of your life, or are they on the periphery, on the outskirts, suburbia or rural, far, far, far? You have to drive a long way to get there. And if, metaphorically speaking, this is not, and or vice versa, So this is your question: is what does it serve me? This just enough and not too much. What am I afraid of? Too much distance or too much closeness? Which part of me is getting attended to here in a kind of a protective way, but also in a way that doesn't really let me experience that which I say I may want? So sometimes it is the thing you want, and that's one thing. If it is not the thing you want, then you really need to ask yourself, what does it serve me? What is it doing to me, not the other person, that isn't so obvious at first sight? Kyla or Kila, can ambivalence spread? My ambivalence I have with my family always seem to seep into my relationship. Yeah, yes. If you, it's not that it spreads, it's that it's a learned pattern. It's a certain way of being in relationship. I'm never sure. I never know if this is what I want. I never know if I'm here because it's what I want or because I am trying to please people and I know what it is that they want. It's those kinds of questions, and I learned them. Every time you experience something, it's a useful thing. Where did I learn this? Where did I become proficient in this language? Where did this vocabulary become so part and parcel of how I am in relationships? And sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's your community, sometimes it's your culture, your religion. So it grows. The context is broad. Where did I learn this? And what has it represented for me, this ambivalence? What does it do to myself and to my relationships and to others, the fact that I am in that state? So that's the question of how does it look? How does it perpetuate itself? What role does it play? How does it become another member of the family, the ambivalence? And then you ask yourself, what would happen if I lived without it? How would it change? What does it protect for me? And what would happen if I put it aside for a moment and I see the world through a different lens? Do I fall in the trap of the perfection? Since I'm never sure, I prefer to always live with chronic doubt. That's one way of turning this. Or does it make me feel like I don't have to worry about failing, right? Making the wrong decision because I make no decision. And I wouldn't, and I don't want to have to live with the consequences. But this is maturity. That is the sign of growing up, is that we make decisions and we live with their consequences and we don't berate ourselves for it the whole time. So I just take out the word spread. All right, let's do one last one, or maybe we stop it here. I think that, man, you people are. How do I differentiate between intuition leading me or trauma misguiding me after being cheated on? It takes time to begin to differentiate this. It's like, it's a lot of conversations with your partner. It's a lot of new experiences. It's a lot of reinterpretation of what happened before. An infidelity, it makes you reinterpret the whole script of the relationship. It's a new lens through which you see everything. But it's also dangerous to do that because sometimes it's not a redefinition of the whole relationship. It's one dimension. It's one thing that happened in the relationship, but it doesn't mean that the whole thing was fake. The whole thing was a fraud. The whole thing was a lie. So be careful about that. But it is what trauma experiences will do to us in the moment. So your question is on a timeline. In the beginning, trauma, it's not misguiding. It is the way that trauma reacts. It wants to protect you. So it wants to make sure that you don't trust anything. And since you feel like you were lured before because you trusted and you didn't see, now it says, I'm going to make you see everything. And when you see the person sitting next to you at the table, you're going to look under the table. But that's good at first. That is what it is. It's in the nature of the beast. Afterwards is when you begin to say, this thing is holding me back. So the beauty of your questions is that they are so rich. We could have a whole session on each one of these questions. And I love the way you are thinking in depth with nuance about these very complex issues of relational ambivalence. So I'm going to begin to say thank you here. If you want to hear about this dance between intimacy and independence, join me on June 24th. I'm doing a beautiful dialogue with the poet David White. And you can register directly, davidwhite.com, where we're going to be talking about this duality, about this polarity between intimacy and independence. So I hope you join us next month for Letters from Esther Live. And follow along by signing up for the newsletter. If you haven't already, it's estherperel.com/blog. And follow me on Instagram and anywhere else at Esther Perel Official. Thanks, everybody, and see you soon.